back to another Doctor Who product review. Today we'll be taking a look at one of the most recent merchandise releases. That is of course the first of 4 B&M Exclusive collector sets of 2018, starting off with arguably the most popular of them all, and it is of course the Third Doctor and Tardis action figure collector set. Now this has been incredibly popular and for within good reason, because this is the first ever Tardis re-release now that we've seen since the original classic Tardis releases, I do believe way back in 2010, and this is the 4th Doctor's Tardis, sort of repainted to look like the Third Doctor's TARDIS. So it is the one with the flat roof, which is one of which that I missed out on the original release. So I'm very excited to be taking a look at this set and finally having one of these TARDISes for my collection after so many years of wanting one. As I was saying, this set has been incredibly popular by many people throughout the UK, meaning that it has been quite hard to come by. But basically, from what I've heard from many B&M stores throughout my local area, is apparently these sets are meant to be in stock for the majority of what they call the toy period. I do believe it is meant to be in the run-up to Christmas, where of course parents go out and buy presents for the kids and things like that. So yeah, if you've not managed to pick this up yet, please do hold, because no doubt you will be able to in the future once the original hype has died down. Something to note, this is on a different product code from the other 3-figure triple packs that have been released. Normally the normal sets that are released by B&M each year, because this is a few pounds more. It is in fact £20 as opposed to £16.99. So basically make sure that you check your local store before making the commute to go and buy one, because you don't want to go all the way there to find out that it's not in. Packaging for this set now, it is a little bit different to the other sets to cater for the TARDIS exterior on the inside. So as you can see around the sides of the box, you do have the standard 5.5 collector series style with the very nice diamond design in the corner there, along with the purple and the red. At the very bottom, you do get the rather nice and bold classic series Doctor Who logo, which stands out quite a lot, and then we get the title of the set at the bottom being the Third Doctor and TARDIS collector set, with opening doors and the character options logo there as well. On the front of the box, you do get this rather nice preview window that really nicely displays the figures and does also stretch around to the side of the box as well, where we just have the Doctor Who logo and the title of the set printed once again. On the other side of the box, you do get the Doctor Who logo along with the promotional image of the set, which does in fact vary from the final product, along the title of the set at the bottom once again. At the top of the box, Doctor Who logo, and then also at the bottom, get all your company information as per usual, along with a little bit of instructions on how to open the doors, just in case you get a little bit confused about that. Once again, exactly the same layout to usual: Doctor Who logo, title of the set, the promotional image of the product, and then we also get a little write-up about the TARDIS itself, which is rather nice and something that the B&M bargain sets normally in fact lack in, so it is nice to see that there. So now taking a look at the Third Doctor and TARDIS out of the box. Now it is really funny that this set is incredibly popular, because both of the figures in fact in this set are completely incorrect. To start off with, we have the TARDIS, which has the same issues as every other classic TARDIS. Basically, due to budget cuts, character options needed to design a TARDIS that was pretty simplistic and kind of covered all the different TARDISes throughout the eras that could be briefly modified to look like another TARDIS from a specific era. So as you can see, this one is exactly the same box compared to that of the 7th Doctor era one and the Hartnell era one, even though they were in fact completely different designs, completely different dimensions, just with a few parts here and there that have been changed. So we'll get onto that in a little bit. And then we have the Third Doctor figure that is meant to be from the Time Monster. According to the details of this box set, the costume is a little bit different in that story. So yeah, if you're looking for a set that basically has a pretty looking classic TARDIS and a fairly nice looking Third Doctor figure, then this set is definitely one of which for you. However, if you're somebody who is a stickler for accuracy, this set will no doubt really get on your nerves, because both of the figures, as I say in it, are incorrect entirely. First up, taking a look at the Third Doctor, of course, as portrayed by John Pertwee in the actual television series. This is exactly the same sculpt to virtually every other Third Doctor figure that we have seen in the line, because character options just use the same sculpt over and over again, and then change it and paint it to suit different costumes from different stories throughout his era. So this is a little bit similar to the one that came in the 13 Doctors set, however, it does have a few noticeable differences in there as well. Taking a closer look at the costume, the blazer has been painted once again in that rather nice fiery red design that did come in the 13 Doctors set, and we do have the same details that have been applied over the top of this that we've got in every single Third Doctor figure. So the actual sculpt itself, a few creases here and there along the side, along the pockets, that have been rather nicely added on, and then we also get the few stitching lines on the back of the jacket as well to kind of represent where the actual material is stitched together in real life. Along the front, do get the blazer design of the different piping lines around the lapels, as you can see, that have been raised above the sculpt, and then we do also get the piping line that continues around the top collar of the figure as well. well, which has once again been sculpted above the actual blazer itself to kind of suggest that it is a separate piece of material. The piping line does of course run alongside the entirety of the entire coat and even runs along the bottom as well, and this has in fact been quite neatly done. Normally on B&M sets this does in fact fall and end up being a little bit smudged, much like the other sets that have been released over the years, so I'm quite impressed with that. Of course along the front we do get the buttons, which once again have been modified to look like the buttons seen sort of within that story. So as you can see, we get the two at the top that are actually sculpted, then the third one at the bottom isn't in fact there at all, it's just kind of been printed over the top to make it look like it is. And then we get the clasps running along the side as well, which much like once again on the 13 Doctors set has in fact just been painted on and does look rather cool, it must be said. I think that it is a rather nice eye-catching costume. Star now once again a continuation of detail with that paint design of the red, which has been rather nicely done along with a few creases in there as well. And then of course on the cuffs of the jacket once again we do get the buttons that have been nicely printed on along with the piping line once again returning. And then we do also have, much like every other Third Doctor figure, these sort of riffles of his shirt underneath really nicely coming through there that have been painted in a rather nice bright white. One of the hands has been sculpted to be able to hold the sonic screwdriver, however once again due to this being a budget set it hasn't been included, which is a little bit of a shame. I think that it wouldn't have cost much whatsoever to include that, just to make the figure look a little bit nicer when on display. And taking a look at the opposite arm, once again exactly the same creases on the jacket, which is rather nice, and the other hand has been sculpted just in your standard up and palm position. And what is nice to see is we do also have the paint tap of the silver ring in there as well, much like every other Third Doctor figure. The shirt in the middle of the costume now, this has just been painted in a rather nice bright white design and is in fact the cravat sculpt that we have once again seen on a number of releases. So starting off at the very bottom we get a few ruffles along the buttons that have been rather nicely sculpted on, and then we get the cravat in the middle that has been painted exactly the same colour as the actual shirt underneath. And this is because in the actual story the Third Doctor doesn't wear a cravat, he doesn't wear a bow either, he is in fact just wearing a ruffled shirt, and that would be fine if the actual shirt sculpt didn't exist without the cravat or the bow tie, but it does, because we recently got the Fourth Doctor regeneration figure from the Planet of Spiders, so it does absolutely baffle me why they've not included that sculpt in there just to make this figure look a little bit more accurate. But still, we've got the cravat there if you so want it, but still it's inaccurate, and that is the thing that makes this not from the Time Monster. Finally, to end off for the costume, taking a look at the trousers, nothing really too much to talk about here. We've just got the standard crease design as per usual, and this time around they have been painted in a rather unusual, very dark grey, almost sort of a brownie colour in there as well, a little bit different to the 13 Doctors collector set, so I suppose those are nice. And of course at the very bottom we do get the shoes as per usual that have been painted in a much darker colour, almost a black, which once again have been painted rather nicely with the soles at the very bottom. Taking a look at that likeness to John Pertwee, I think that once again, much like every other Third Doctor figure, they've got a really good job done with the sculpt. I think that it looks just like John Pertwee, and I love the way that we've got all the creases and wrinkles around the face. I think they've really nicely captured his character. However, that really can't be credited for this release because it is a sculpt that we've seen now for many years on the trot, and it was originally done for the Forbidden Planet exclusive line. However, something that can be credited on this actual figure is the paint taps on the face. This is a major step up from the previous bargain set Third Doctor that we've seen back in 2016, that I do believe was the Third Doctor from Invasion of the Dinosaurs. There was just something about that figure that looked a little bit bland. However, they've definitely stepped it up on this figure. We have a lot sharper paint application, especially around the eyes. I love the way that we have the eye whites in there, and also the lighter blue of the inside of the eye along with the pupil in there as well, and even a small splodge of white paint there to kind of represent a reflection as well. On top of this we get the eyebrows that have been recreated in a slightly darker grey colour, and then also at the very bottom we do have the lips, which once again have been given a rather nice neutral skin tone colour, and then the actual skin tone itself is in fact rather natural. A brief look at the hair as well. Once again, this has been upgraded to something that looks a little bit more like the Forbidden Planet exclusive line. Do get the sculpt in there of all the really nice curls, and this has been given a really nice wash of a rather nice white colour, and then over the top of this we have been given a darker grey colour to represent some of the curls and bring out a bit of depth a bit more, which is quite nice. Here we have the most recent Third Doctor figure alongside the B&M Bargains version of the Invasion of the Dinosaurs Third Doctor that was released back in 2016, and I think that there's just something about that figure that just looks incredibly soft. This was released around the same time as the 12th Doctor figures, where they also didn't give him any creases or wrinkles on the face and didn't really give him any aging, so it may have been something to do with the paint that they used, but there's just something about the eyes that look incredibly boring and dead. And then we also have the hair as well, which for some reason they have this rather bright yellow design in there as well, which looking back I don't really like as much as the more recent sort of white grey design, which is rather nice and once again accurate to what is seen in the series a little bit more. And also the skin tone is just something that seems a little bit off, and also the lips aren't really that painted either. They just kind of look like they blend into the face, which is a little bit of a letdown, but I do definitely think that the more recent version that I'm reviewing now is a major step up from that previous one. Articulation, it is pretty much exactly the same to every other Third Doctor and classic figure, nothing special whatsoever. 360 at the head, 360 at the upper arm, also 360 here, bend at the elbow at 90, 360 at the wrists, 360 at the waist, T-crotch joint, we also have 360 at the thigh, bend at the knee, and then that is pretty much it. However, much like the majority of B&M Bargains figures, for some reason there's something about the articulation points which seems rather flimsy, meaning that when on display, it doesn't stand up as good as the older Forbidden Planet exclusive figures. It just seems a little bit weaker. Now to end off with taking a look at this recent Third Doctor release alongside all the other Third Doctor releases in my collection. As you can see, character options really like the Third Doctor because they can use the same sculpt over and over again to replicate many different costumes, and to be honest, on a lot of different occasions it actually works pretty well. However, something that stands out to me when it comes to these recent B&M sets is that these two here seem to be made out of almost a completely different and cheaper material to the older releases. Everything about the actual figure, down to the paint apps, seems to be a lot more glossy, and also the actual blazer on the front of the figure and the main body section seems to be made of a cheaper material, unlike the older Forbidden Planet figures that seem to be a lot more sharper and structured and generally feel like you're holding a better quality figure. Especially when comparing this figure to the 13 Doctor set version, you can quite obviously tell that the paint apps are sharper, and also the paint application is a lot more matte as opposed to glossy on this more recent release, and generally I do think that the likeness is a little bit better as well. So really, if you've got the 13 Doctors set, you've got the better version of this figure. However, if you missed out on this set, much like many people did, then this is kind of a cheaper counterpart that really sort of looks pretty much exactly the same, just with the bow tie difference as opposed to the cravat on the more recent versions. Yeah, it's a nice figure, does look good. It's only when you start to look into more depth where you start to realise the flaws on this one compared to the other releases from the Classics exclusive line. Now taking a look at the second figure in the set, it is of course the Third Doctor's Tardis exterior, and it's no doubt the thing that you're all watching this review for, because it is very exciting indeed to finally have a new variation of Classic Series Tardis to add to the collection. However, much like as I was saying earlier, this is in fact completely inaccurate, much like every other Classic Series Tardis, because they've used one basic sculpt and then applied a paint job to the top of this to make it barely resemble a TARDIS from a certain era. However, the unusual thing with this TARDIS is that it doesn't really do that job either, because we have this black base at the very bottom, which kind of suggests that it is from the early half of the Third Doctor era, where it was essentially falling apart and they needed to stick it on a black plinth in order for it to even stand up straight, because it was kind of the bare remains of the 60s prop that was left over from the Second Doctor era. And then the other half of this figure, kind of that lighter blue paint app, suggests that this is from the later half of the Third Doctor era. So it is a little bit of a blend between the two, which it does look nice. This is the unusual occasion where, unlike the other Classic Series TARDISes, I think that on camera this looks a lot better because of the paint apps applied over the top. It looks a lot more accurate to a sort of normal TARDIS. However, at the same time, for actual on-screen accuracy, it doesn't look accurate whatsoever. So yeah, it is a little bit of an unusual situation. So to start off with, taking a closer general look at the actual TARDIS design itself. Now, much like the majority of Classic Series TARDISes, they've once again got this really nice wood grain texture along the sides of the box, which really nicely give it the impression that it is made of wood. As you can see on the back of the TARDIS, we do unfortunately have the big, massive, ugly speaker grille that isn't in fact needed, because this TARDIS, of course, isn't electronic, and we do also just have underneath this the battery compartment as well. More importantly, the paint application over the top of this is really impressive. I love the way that we have this lighter blue paint app that really nicely makes it stand out on the shelf compared to the other Classic Series TARDISes. However, more importantly, we have this really nice dirty texture applied over the top. As you can see, we just have almost this darker colour of almost a black or brown that is being applied to the sections of the inner panels there, just to give it a bit more shading and essentially make it look a little bit more beat up and battered, much like how the TARDIS prop did look throughout the majority of Classic Series Doctor Who. At the bottom bottom of the TARDIS, we do get this rather unusual black section, which is basically the original base of the TARDIS, just painted black. Now, this is a completely inaccurate piece. A few people like it, a few people dislike it. To me, I think that it is unusual to have a whole black section on a normally blue police box, but I guess it kind of looks okay. Looks nothing like what is seen in the actual story. That is literally a plinth that isn't even connected to the TARDIS whatsoever, because the TARDIS essentially doesn't have a base. But yeah, we can just kind of look over that and kind of ignore that it's even there in the first place, because I do believe that for a Third Doctor TARDIS, this base is completely different anyway. It is a lot shorter, a lot flatter, much like the 1960s Peter Backracki Patrick Troughton prop. A closer look at the middle section of the front panel of the TARDIS, we do of course have the police public call box, free for use of public signage, which has been really nicely printed onto the side of the box. I do believe that once again, this is exactly the same signage that is seen on the original Fourth Doctor Planet of Evil TARDIS, with the black backdrop and then the white text really nicely coming to the front. And we do have a border around this as well in a light blue colour. And then towards the sides of this, we do have the handle of the TARDIS, which has been painted in a rather nice silver paint app. And then just above this, we do have the TARDIS keyhole. Now, once again, this hasn't been painted or anything like that. And I do believe at this point in Doctor Who history, the TARDIS lock was in fact a little bit more down here, much like on the 1960s prop, as opposed to up here. But once again, due to this being a basic design, it does seem to follow the more later 80s prop as opposed to the earlier TARDIS props. Yeah, a little bit of a shame, but something that once again you kind of come to expect with these reused designs. Now, moving up to the windows of the police public call box, we do in fact have pretty much exactly the same design to every other classic series TARDIS. So to start off with, the guides around the windows have in fact been painted in the light blue, much like the rest of the TARDIS prop, and the actual inside panes of the glass itself has just been achieved by using a clear piece of plastic. And we do have a nice weathering texture that has been applied to the top of this. Unlike the other TARDIS props that we've seen in the classic series, there is almost this dirtied effect that has really nicely got into the crevices, once again giving it a rather nice battered texture. However, unlike the TARDIS that is seen at this point in Doctor Who's era, I do believe that in the show itself, once again, the majority of the TARDIS was in fact falling apart, and a few of the different panes are in fact black, a few of them are yellow. This isn't on this prop, this is basically a nice neatened up version. However, at the very bottom of the TARDIS windows, we do in fact have the inner corner pieces that have once again been glazed over in the frosted effect, much like the rest of every other classic series TARDIS. The police public call box signage. Now, unlike the 7th Doctor TARDIS and 1st Doctor TARDIS that I've got in my collection already, they've in fact gone with a black backdrop on the text and then the white font at the very front there, which is different to the other ones because they are a dark blue and a lighter blue from what I can recall. Just looking up to the shelf now to see if I'm in fact correct on that. However, much like once again the majority of classic TARDISes, this is in fact completely wrong. The lightbox signage itself, I do believe, is meant to be a lot bulkier on this version of TARDIS. Unfortunately, this is a much more scaled down design. However, more importantly, of course, at the very top, we do have the flat roof. Now, this does suffer from exactly the same thing that I heard that the Planet of Evil 4th Doctor TARDIS does, where almost the roof itself is a little bit sunk down, as you can see in the very middle there. It does tend to sort of concave a little bit, which is a shame, but I'm just happy to have a flat roof TARDIS, to be honest, after so many years of wanting one. Darker paint job that has been applied to the top of this to give it a battered, weathered look. Finally, at the very top of the TARDIS, we do of course get the light section, which once again is exactly the same sculpt to all the previous TARDISes, which is unfortunately inaccurate. However, what is nice to see is they have in fact painted the casing in a black colour, which I do believe is accurate to 70s Doctor Who. I think that it varied quite a lot of times, to be honest. Just depends on when they could actually find the casing and when they just decided to leave the bulb on the very top and not have the casing around it whatsoever. This has been once again given a rather nice battered painted look. However, it would have been nice maybe when they did this TARDIS originally in 2010 if they maybe thought ahead a little bit and made the whole light section a completely separate piece so they could then sculpt individual lights for the different eras, because I find that if this was more accurate to 70s Doctor Who, or much like say the 60s prop had a more accurate 60s light, then it would have just set off that prop a little bit more and made it more individual to that era, and you could kind of get away with using exactly the same sculpt of TARDIS box a bit more. Two special features of this TARDIS: unfortunately it isn't electronic, so we don't have a light up light or anything like that, or any sound effects, which is a shame, but hey, something that once again you do come to expect for the cheaper retail price. However, much like how it does exclaim so boldly on the box, this TARDIS does have opening doors. How very exciting indeed. However, the ironic thing with this TARDIS, and something just to rub it in even more, is that my TARDIS doesn't in fact have amazingly opening doors that in fact stays open, because when you go to open my TARDIS, it does go back as so. However, it doesn't in fact stay open, because for some reason the mechanism on the inside, I have in fact took the base off to see exactly what was going on, but unfortunately there's just something in it that I do believe involves this small piece of plastic here that is very minute that has snapped off, meaning that it doesn't in fact stay open. Now, I don't really do any stop motion, or I don't even play with my action figures whatsoever. Of course, I just display them because I'm a collector, so this doesn't really bother me that much. However, if a younger fan got this, it is a little bit disappointing, just the fact that it doesn't stay open. Of course, it does have the button at the very bottom, much like every other classic series TARDIS, but this is completely rendered useless. Yeah, that is a little bit of a shame. However, we do have the other door opening as well, because we don't have the actual phone socket on the inside. And the interesting thing is, on the inside of this, you can actually tell how the plastic is different from the other Forbidden Planet exclusive TARDISes, which are in fact a little bit better quality from what I can see. This does seem a little bit cheaper on the inside, so yeah, that is quite interesting. And much like all the classic series TARDISes, we don't have a backdrop either, which is very good and once again accurate. Doing a comparison now to the actual other TARDIS props that are in my collection from the classic series, you can quite obviously tell that the actual base of the box is pretty much exactly the same design. However, I'm just so happy to finally have one in the collection that has this flat roof section, because it does make it look a little bit different. I must admit, there is an illusion there to make you think that it is a completely different TARDIS. I do definitely like this design. I think that especially next to the other series TARDISes, it does look nice on display. It is a nice variant. I think that especially the way that we have the black text at the top and on the pull to open sign here, it makes it stand out quite a lot. And also, it is a nice colour blue. It's just a shame that it isn't really accurate to what is seen within the show, because the actual sculpt doesn't really support that either. So yeah, overall, a very nice variant, and I imagine if you have the 4th Doctor TARDIS as well, this will also be a nice variant to pick up, because I imagine that it is in fact quite different looking from that version as well. And also, just for a little bit of fun ending off, basically the story to this is I got incredibly sad and impatient, and I made my own sort of Peter Buckraki late 60s TARDIS that went into the 3rd Doctor era literally earlier this year, made it completely out of scratch from cardboard, changed up the designs a little bit, and I must admit, I actually think mine might be a little bit more accurate to the actual dimensions of the prop we've seen within the show. However, of course, due to it being made of cardboard, it doesn't really have the same effect as this TARDIS in the middle. However, just to give you an impression, I do believe this is what a Barry Newbury TARDIS is meant to be in scale-wise to this prop here, so you can in fact tell the difference of how wide this TARDIS is compared to this one being very slim. And of course, this one does look a lot more stumpy and a bit more wider as well. However, I do think that it is still sort of maybe a bit inaccurate, and the fact that it's made of cardboard does generally make it look crap, but hey, you know, it was still worth it. It was quite a fun job of making them, because I'm just a sad human being, but I've got a proper one for the collection now, so I suppose that's kind of good. However, I'm still probably going to keep the other two, because, you know, I'm quite proud of them. So overall, for the Doctor Who B&M Exclusive 2018 3rd Doctor and TARDIS Collector figure set, I think that this is honestly an absolute bargain. For only £20, you are essentially getting a classic variation of TARDIS and a rather nice variation of the 3rd Doctor. I think that if you're somebody who missed out on the 13 Doctors Collector set, this is a really nice different version of the 3rd Doctor to add to your collection that looks a little bit like the one in that set. And also, the classic TARDIS does naturally have flaws. I think that it's a flaw that every single classic series TARDIS has, and it is the fact that it isn't on-screen accurate to what is seen in the actual show itself. Of course, the dimensions are completely wrong, and it doesn't really look like the on-screen prop, but that said, it is still a really nice variation. If you want a TARDIS to add to your collection that looks visually really cool, it looks nice on camera, then this is certainly a product for you, especially if you're somebody like me, in fact missed out on the original 4th Doctor and TARDIS collector figure set and you really wanted a flat roof TARDIS, then this is a great pickup for you, because you finally get one. And it is also really nice to in fact have a TARDIS that is a completely different paint app to that original 4th Doctor TARDIS, to kind of keep that rarity of the original 4th Doctor TARDIS that no doubt a lot of collectors did in fact originally pick up. I think that generally the weathering on the TARDIS as well is really impressive, and something of which that even the Forbidden Planet exclusive TARDISes did tend to lack in, but unfortunately, especially especially when compared to those Forbidden Planet exclusive Tardis sets, it does in fact feel a little bit cheaper. I think that the plastic that it has in fact been made of does seem to be a little bit cheaper, a bit more brittle, and also a few shortcuts have been made. The sheer fact that my Tardis doesn't even have that working door mechanism, and it has in fact snapped on the inside, is in fact a flaw from the factory itself, and hopefully something that isn't a reoccurring theme for other Tardises that people will pick up out there that are currently available in other B&M stores. And the same applies for the Third Doctor figure as well. It is quite obvious that some shortcuts have been made. The fact that the plastic on the costume does seem to be a lot cheaper from previous Third Doctor figures, but also at the same time I think that some of the changes in the likeness, such as the updated paint apps on the face, are a much welcome addition and definitely a major step up from the previous B&M Third Doctor release. Overall, a very good set, one of which that I definitely recommend, but also at the same time, for those of you that are sticklers for accuracy and are general collectors of the classic figure line, then this set does have exactly the same flaw that other TARDIS sets have had in the past. Thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do stay tuned for other Doctor Who B&M exclusive collector set reviews in the future, including all 3 of the other B&M action figure 3-packs that have been released alongside this one. And I guess I'll see you all in more Doctor Who product reviews in the future as well. So yeah, thanks for watching. I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.